King, it's a lot of suckers out here with their money, and you can't be no sucker out here with your money.
Bro, I ain't no sucker. Bet you I don't.
Okay. What's assets?
Assets are things that bring money into your bank account.
What's liabilities?
Liabilities are things that take money out your bank account.
Entrepreneurship is the act of becoming an entrepreneur. What's entrepreneurship?
Entrepreneurship is a process of setting up a business or businesses.
Taking on a greater than normal
Financial risk.
What's an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur is a person that organizes and operates a business or businesses.
Also taking on a greater than normal
Financial risk.
What's financial mean?
Money.
And what's risk mean?
Chance.
Come on. What does it mean to own stock?
When you own a share of a company.
Come on. What's real estate investing?
Real estate investing is when you invest in a immovable property.
What's the two types of real estates?
Commercial real estate and residential real estate.
What's commercial real estate?
Commercial real estate is property for businesses and workspace, like an office, store, or land.
And what's residential real estate?
Property to live on, like a house, apartment, or condominium.
Come on. It comes with extra fees when you have real estate, you feel me?
Mm-hmm.
Daddy tells you how many times he pays his state property tax a year.
Once a year.
What's the type of maintenance fee?
Cutting grass.
Come on. What's HOA?
Homeowner association.
And what comes along with that?
HOA fee.
Come on. And when it comes to the brokerage percent, what percent is that?
7.
Come on. What's equity?
Equity is the difference between what your business is worth minus what you own.
Also assets minus
liabilities and debt.
Good job. What's credit report?
Credit report is like a report card letting you know how well you did by paying your money back you borrowed.
And how does credit affect your life?
The better you keep your credit, the more opportunities you'll have to get funding.
And what? Large purchases like?
A car or a house.
Come on. And always repay what you
owe.
Because if you owe somebody, that means you're in
debt.
And you never want to be in
debt.
Because that means you
owe somebody.
And we don't never owe
somebody.
Because that ain't what suckers do, period. Come on.
Yeah, man.
I need that video. Come on. That ain't what suckers do. Every week. Hello, audience. Happy to see you again. This is George Demaree, and we're here with Money Matters. And every time I see that, you know, I talk to Sharon Bell, our producer and engineer, and say maybe we need to change it. But sometimes I think that intro just kind of just says it all. Today we have Marcus Fulmer. He's a financial advisor for Edward Jones. Marcus, reintroduce yourself.
Okay. Good morning, audience. So I'm Marcus Fulmer, financial advisor for Edward Jones, as George stated. I'm here today to hopefully give a little bit of insight and nuggets in reference to the financial world and things that you can do to make yourself much more productive in that area. Definitely been a member here at this church for going on more than a decade now, and love you all and love my church. So that's why I'm here today.
One of the things we've been able to do in this program is that every member, every person so far who has been a part of this show for the last 8 to 10 weeks are also members of St. Stephen Baptist Church. We have a lot of talent here. We have a lot of people who have experienced some success. And I think it would be good if we could just take what we have and spread it among all the members. So we're going to talk a little bit about investing. Isn't that right?
Yes, we are.
And, you know, how to invest, what it looks like. Remember, we're going to also spend some time on this. We want to change how people think. Even if you are, quote unquote, a successful or not as successful investor, that we want to find ways to give you information. One of the things that I've discovered in doing research prior to these shows is that regardless of ethnicity, people just don't know. And Marcus, people really don't know what they don't know. So what this is designed to do is to help to make our members and our members' friends, folks who have taken the time to come here and watch this, to become a little more financial literate. So let me start by saying this. Marcus, tell me a little bit about you and how you got into business and what you like about it.
Great question. So I'm originally from Alabama. So George, I started off always as a kid being very interested about money. Of course, my parents were not wealthy by any stretch of the means, but I always knew there was a difference between what my parents had and what maybe other families had, particularly the ones that didn't look like us. So with that being said, I carried that all throughout high school, and when I got to college is really when I had the light bulb moment, if you will. Had the opportunity to go to some investment seminars in college, and also did a couple internships with a couple financial firms here in town, which ended up benefiting me very greatly, and hence me being in the business a decade later.
It's all about information. It's all about exposure, and we're exposing you to everything that's money related, and most everything is money related, from mortgages to insurances to stocks and bonds, and effective way of investing your money.
Right.
Let me ask this, Marcus. How are you currently actively encouraging your clients to plan this during this pandemic, and what do you think is going to look like post-pandemic?
Great question. During the pandemic, I always tell people there's a few things you can do. I try to encourage people to think about your lifestyle as a business. Every dollar you're able to keep and deploy to various causes that's going to help your future, then that's what you want to do. Things that's taken away from that, then of course those are things that may not be in your best interest. So let me give you some simple examples. If we're talking about reining in your spending, if I during normal times, if you will, if I was looking at my budget and I was spending $1,000 a month on frivolous stuff, during a pandemic I might want to say, hey, you know what, I might need to bring that down to $500 a month just till we get through what we're going through in terms of this pandemic. A lot of people's careers, jobs is uncertain. And by the way, if I'm not an economist, but reading from everything I hear, it may get a little bit worse as we go towards later in the year. So I would be prepared for that. I would try to stash up some cash currently just to make sure my family and I are adequately prepared in terms of the future.
Should people be investing and saving during these real difficult times?
Great question. The simple answer to that is yes, but maybe not the same. So everybody, there's not a one size fits all. But if you are a younger investor, yes, this is a time to back up the truck for your future and invest as much as you can with an anticipation of working for the next 20 or 30 years. If you're someone that's of age or a little more seasoned, hey, you may want to make sure you have your asset allocation appropriately identified, being able to protect yourself just in case we see more potential downturns.
I know a number of people a few weeks ago now, a month or so ago, got stimulus checks. Where should people, did you have any information on what people should do? I know a lot of those are just making sure that you can make ends meet for that particular month. What's your thought process as it relates to that?
Great question. I've had this come up several times. What I've encouraged most people is, hey, based upon your current situation, whatever that may be, you want to make sure that money is meeting a future goal, especially one that may be uncertain in this current market environment. So as an example, I ask some of my clients, hey, are we still good on 3 to 6 months worth of emergency expenses? And if their answer to that is yes, I'm like, okay, great. We've got that taken care of. But if it's not, of course, we want to make sure we address that because we want to make sure you're adequately prepared. But what's a future expense that you may have coming? Is it property taxes? Is it you needed to get something done or fix on your car? Maybe you have a mortgage that you're paying on and you can afford to take that stimulus check and put yourself 1 month ahead. I've had a lot of clients that have done things of that sort to make sure they, if something does come up, they're able to minimize that pain if they don't have the funds there.
I know that you guys do, and you do a lot of things when it comes to financial planning and helping people look toward the future. It's basically what you're doing. What does the future look like as it relates to your dollars? Let's talk a little bit about, and we're going to talk about a lot of things, but talk a little bit about estate planning. Tell me what you do as it relates to that.
Great question. So, as an advisor, as George stated, you always want to try to get your clients we have a church song here. I don't know the exact title, but it talks about seeing yourself in the future, seeing yourself 10, 15, 20 years down the road. What does that look like? Because the preparation starts today, not tomorrow. So when it comes to estate planning specifically, you want to make sure your estate or your assets, your home, your cars, your investments, your 401k, etc., are aligned to go where you desire for them to go or be handled by whomever you desire for them to be handled by, assuming that you're not able to take care of those things on a daily basis. So estate planning becomes very critical. Most of us probably have learned indirectly about estate planning after we've heard somebody die, because then a house goes through probate, goes through a variety, same thing with cars if they're not in multiple people's name, bank accounts, etc. So if you don't have a will, I always encourage people, hey, get a will. We have people that we can help consult there. I'm not an attorney, but we have people that we work with that can help with those basics of estate planning.
When you say probate, what do you mean? What happens?
Great question. So as a simple example, let's just say you own a home and you don't have a will, or you have not designated where that house goes and nobody else owns it but you. Whenever you pass away, that house now will go to probate and it goes to court. So of course, a judge comes into play there, an attorney comes into play, there's court costs, legal fees, but the court then determines who they think the home should go to, not you, because you're now deceased. The court determines who they think that home should go to, and of course, then there's things that can be contested by family members, by people that you may have been liable to. But probate involves all of those things. But if you have a will in place or a plan in place, you dictate where that asset goes. And that's what I try to encourage people to do.
So you can avoid, your family can avoid all that drama if you take the time to do a will and you designate where your money's going.
Correct.
Does it also help with taxes on that money? Does it help in that regard?
Great question. In some instances, it can. It's a case-by-case scenario, but yes, it can in some instances, for sure.
So let's talk about people building wealth. 78%, and I don't like to give so many bad statistics, but I'm going to share this with the audience today.
Okay.
78% of Americans today, regardless of ethnicity, live paycheck to paycheck. It's they even said there was one statistic that I just read just recently that even folks who make over $100,000 a year, 25% of those folks live paycheck to paycheck. So basically, it's because of student loans, credit card debt, and it was basically student loans and credit card debt and unexpected medical expenses. Okay, and those are the things that put even people who make a little extra money in a bad position financially. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about what's it look like to live below your means. What would you suggest to a person when they do that?
Great question. When I think about living beneath my means, I always like to use an example of, let's just say, you have a married couple who makes $100,000 a year. One of the things that immediately comes to my mind is a saying from our pastor. He always says, act your wage. So not your age, but act your wage. So how much you make. If you make $100,000 a year, I always try to encourage my clients, live like you make $60,000. So live off of 60% of your income. Save, invest 40% of it. If you're not able to do that, let's just say for whatever reason you're not there now. If you have the opportunity to have a side job or multiple streams of income, or you get raises, act as if they never occurred. That's what I have always preached. That's what I've always tried to abide by. And doing those things allow you to grow your money, assuming you put them in the right place, over time. So those things can help you go in the right direction.
Let's talk about folks who are starting out. All right, you only 37% of black people in America own stock. All right, but we know that one of the best ways that you can build wealth and have some emergency fund is to own your own home, right? We're going to talk about that in a moment. And two, having the ability to invest. How would you tell a person between the ages, I mean, maybe a recent college grad, or maybe even not a recent college grad, someone just in his 20s, have a job. How do you get a person to start investing? What are some of the things?
Great question. One of the simple things I always say, hey, Google is your friend.
Wow.
Google is, I think majority of us have some access to Google. Do your research. Look up what a stock, what a bond, what a mutual fund is. How should I go about saving? And once you do that, and if you're not comfortable, reach out to someone such as myself, or maybe even a local bank that you're associated with, to get a relationship started with someone that you think can be of benefit to you, helping you build your future. Whatever you do, wherever you are, just make sure you get started. That's the key thing. You got to get started. I've met a number of people over my lifetime who are 10, 20 years later post-graduating college and still haven't started. Now you're behind the 8 ball. And the earlier you get started, the better off you will be long term. And that's called the compounding effect of money.
Well, another thing that Reverend Cosby says often is that if you wait for the right time, it'll be a no time. because it'll never be a right time.
Right.
If you wait for every perfect situation in order to make any changes, whether it be employment, whether it be in what any major change that you do in your life, you will never make it happen. Just recently, I had one of my ex-employees. She had worked there at Alpha Media for a number of years, and she decided that she was ready to leave. That she was ready to take the rest of her life and do something different after working there for over 20 years. And she told herself, and as I shared with her also, is that if she waited for everything to be perfect, she would have never made that move. But once she's made the move, I talked to her this morning, once she made the move, there was a feeling of euphoria, that she felt good, that she stepped out on faith and she did it. So it's the same way with investing. Right. We're not saying you got to invest a lot every week, but pay yourself first. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And that's one of the critical components of investing. I'll give you a good example for those of you gave the example of maybe younger, out of college, or maybe even just in your 20s and just starting. I have a chart in my office, and I always try to show this to young people. It shows if you invested $100 a month. Now let's think about $100 a month. Whatever your habit is, that's more than likely $100 a month.
It really is.
Whether you like to eat, whether you drink, whether you buy shoes, clothes, etc. That's probably $100 a month. Now, $100 a month over a 35 and 40 year time span.
Wow.
Earning 7 on average or 10% on average makes you have a net worth of more than $800,000. And that's on a 7-year number. 10-year number is well over $1 million.
So, because as we mentioned before, and we shared this with them, Marcus, that money grows exponentially. We talked about this a couple other times. That if you're saving $100 a month, well, it doesn't seem to be as much when you get to year 1 or 2. But when you get to year 10, why not? Another thing that I love quoting our pastor about making changes and doing it now and not waiting. He said that a man came to him a number of years ago who was 35, And Pastor Cosby said, well, why don't you go to school? You know, Simmons is here, learn a different trade. And the guy said, well, that'll take 4 years. I won't get done until I'm 39 or 40 years old. And was Pastor Cosby's response. He said, well, you're going to be 39 or 40 anyway.
Right.
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 So why not do it now? What we're talking about more than anything else is changing how you think. Changing how you think. If you, another thing, Marcus, I'm going to share with you before we go any further about changing how you think and how it's important to not get stuck and continue to listen to sometimes of the people that's in your circle of influence. I asked O.C. Craig last week, I said, well, and he's a mortgage broker. I said, O.C., why is it that if you can buy a house and your mortgage payment can be as much or sometimes less than the rent you pay, why is it from he said he's done thousands of applicants, he's been doing it for years. I said, then why is it that people resist buying a house? And the first word out of his mouth, Marcus, was hereditary. Hereditary. He said because no one in his family ever done it. Grandmama rent it, mama rent it, so I rent. So one of the problems that I see with investing money is not having somebody in your house that can help you. Tell me some of the experiences you've had with that.
Yes, so many experiences there in reference to it being a first time, and that can be scary, and I understand. It's the fear of the unknown, and it's also, George, I think one of the biggest things when it comes to investing is people can't control the results. So, you know, investing in the stock market, while it has proven to be a metric that make people wealthy over time, assuming they follow the recipes, it's also something they can't go put their hands on and take it out right now or make the outcome in their favor in all occasions. So that's one big thing to it. But just making sure that you have a plan in place. I think this has been said a lot of times, especially even from our pastor. You want to make sure you plan. If not, you're planning to fail. You know, have a plan in place. Direct your money where it to go. Don't let your money direct you. So we want to make sure that, hey, when it comes to investing, you do your research. You understand where the money is going and what the risks are, because there's risk with everything. Let me be very clear there. But taking those small steps to get more comfortable with what you are potentially considering doing can definitely go a long ways in building wealth.
You talked about risk, and one of the things about investing, and especially in the stock market, now there are certain things that have a little less risk but give you a little lesser return, right? But usually the things that give you a major return also have major risk accompanied to it. You know, they coexist, right? So talk a little bit about risk tolerance and what's that mean, and how do you communicate that with folks?
Great question. You know, when it comes to your risk tolerance, we all have different risks that we're willing to take. And I always say, hey, imagine we were on an elevator, and it's two different elevators. One elevator is hanging by one rope. The other elevator is hanging by 100 ropes. Which one are you going to take? Majority of the people I have talked to said, you know, hey, put me on that 100 rope elevator because it's safer. If one of the cables snap, then I got 99 more. I feel a lot safer. Now, every once in a while, you'll have somebody that says, hey, I'm willing to take that one rope. Well, based upon the risk that person takes, if they make it to the top when it comes to investing, their payoff is likely 99 times greater than it was with the risk factor over here when you had the 100 ropes. Okay. So just from a risk standpoint, and I use a lot of other examples, I always want to make sure I know where people are aligned when it comes to that risk. Are you willing to invest, as an example, $1,000, and if it drops down to $700, what's your mindset? Do you take it out? Do you keep it in? Do you stay focused on your long-term goals? You know, because the answer is going to be different. Or, you know, are you willing to say, hey, you know what? I got this $1,000 I want to invest. I'm okay with it going up and down just a small bit, but I can't, you know, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I saw it go down to 700.
Right.
You know, so we just use different analogies and trying to help people think about.
It does. And if you're going to invest in the stock market, you gotta realize that there's peaks and valleys as it relates to it. I mean, just personally, I personally invested in a piece of stock a week ago, and got a tip. Went up 50%. I said, "Oh wow!" You know, felt good about it.
Okay.
My broker said, "You want to take your I said, "Nah, man, let it ride." Well, today I'm up about 10%. and the way the stock market looks, I may be losing money this time tomorrow. But the key is, you got to stick around. You can't. I did not risk that, knowing that I had to have a return that day.
Right. And if you don't mind, just before we leave that, there's also things I always say, consider things such as companies that you know are going to be around, irregardless of what happens in the economy. You got to eat. You got to shop somewhere. You got to buy clothes. You got to have products that are meant for babies. You know, those are your companies that, hey, if you want to take a little bit of risk but get a nice return, think about those blue chip quality names.
Look, Apple is not going anywhere. You know, Apple had, I don't know now, but a few years ago, Apple had more money in cash reserve than the federal government.
Correct.
They did, didn't they?
Did.
And I'm thinking, well, that's a pretty good investment right there. Look, stock's a little expensive, but that's a good investment. This is when you become a more of a mature investor, you know. Now, again, consistency, a few $100s a month to get you to where you need to be, and then you can start putting it in other areas.
Correct.
How often, how often should a person change their investment strategy?
Great question. You know, you can change the investment strategy based on a number of things, and I'm just going to give you examples. Maybe your risk level has changed. You know, you're not comfortable taking the risk that you did when you were 35. Maybe you are now married, or maybe even you're divorced. There's a lot of varying circumstances that could cause someone to change their asset allocation. But at a bare minimum, if I was an investor myself, just everyday speaking, you know, I would look at my assets at least a couple times a year at a minimum, just to see if I need to reallocate, make changes, how it's going, speak to someone about those specific investments that I own.
Look, okay, you've been, so how long have you been in the business now?
This is my 11th year.
11th year. He looks like his baby, doesn't he? You know, good for him, you know, right? But, all right, and it's something you enjoy. Let's say there's a young person out there that's viewing this right now, or maybe a parent, and how would you share with those people? How could they get in the business that you're in? What path would they need to take to get to where you are?
Great question. There's a number of ways to get into this business. Number one, let me make sure I dispel a myth that has been out there on many occasions. You do not have to have a certain type of degree to get into this business. That's number one. Now, what requires you or enables you to get into this business is the testing that is required. So those are things like Series 7, Series 63, Series 66, life, health insurance, etc. If you are passionate about it, I always say you must be able to talk to people, so be articulate, be able to share analogies, examples of how people may go about achieve their goals, and you got to be a people's person, you know, because you got to be able to have a dialogue with people and encourage them or persuade them to see your side and why that may be of benefit to them. So do your research, and then of course, if nothing else, if you don't have anybody that you can reach out to, whether that's someone at the bank to learn more about the career, hey, feel free to contact the church or contact me. I'll be more than glad to guide you in reference to getting you where you want to go.
So, all right. With that being said, we kind of touched on this before, but let me even expand on it. If you could point to 2 or 3 things that you like the very most about what you do every day, that I can tell you're passionate about it, what is it, Marcus?
I would say, if I could say probably 2 things off the top of my head. One, seeing people go from not maybe being as confident about their plan, or maybe even not having a plan at all, to processing one, and a few years down the line, them realizing like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have done this 5-10 years ago. I would be so much farther along. And maybe even them realizing that goal of, hey, I was trying to save for retirement. I've done a great job with your help of planning that, and now I'm able to live comfortably and not depend on my employer. And if they want to get rid of me tomorrow, I'm in a good position. That meant a lot for me personally, the first time that happened to me. I'll give you one other small specific example. Sometimes you encounter things that you don't anticipate you're going to encounter. I didn't get into this business thinking that I'll know a lot of the things that I know about people, where their money is, what they do, how they do it, who's getting it and who's not.
Right.
But, one of my clients asked me, he said, hey, I'm not going to live forever. When that time frame comes, more than likely I'm probably going to pass away, because he was a little bit older than his wife. He handed me a box. He said, I want you to give this to my wife when the time is right. Wow. And I was like, oh. Okay, didn't expect that, but he said, I've written some things in here that I want her to know, and about the money, but more importantly, what I've kept aside all these years, that she's meant to me, my family's meant to me, and at the right time, I want you to give it to her. George, that sent me, you leaving this with me, you feel that comfortable. Not your kids, because he has kids. You leaving this to me to give to your wife when that time frame comes. So you get into those type of scenarios, and you really realize how impactful you have been in somebody's life.
Well, if a person, if we're going to keep it real, and I like to keep it real on this show, if I'm going to trust you with my money, what I'm really trusting you with is my wife, making sure she's okay. Because that's what she's going to need if something were to happen to me, or my children.
Right.
So
right.
That's the kind of relationship that a person has to. I always say there are 2 words that I use in order for people to feel comfortable with doing business with another company. And these 2 words are, one is trust, and one is value, And I've said for years that it's really 80% trust and 20% value, because people will do business. Another company may offer a little more value, but if the trust isn't there, you are not going to do business with them. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to put yourself in a position to start saving, right? If 58% of Americans didn't have $1,000 saved, regardless of ethnicity. Now, and again, 78% of Americans, it depends on, this is from Forbes magazine a year ago. Okay. This is before COVID hit. When this survey happened, we're living paycheck to paycheck. And the definition of paycheck to paycheck was, once all your bills are paid, once all your monthly expenses were met, you had no money left to save. Well, this is what you do. So I thought I would offer a little bit of advice, and maybe you can chime in as well.
Okay.
One is budget. It is very difficult to budget, but budget. Remember, it requires discipline.
It does.
So you put it on paper. We've said this a few times as well. If you don't write it down, you don't realize what you spend $10 on,
Correct.
or $20 on here or there. Marcus said earlier that $100 a month, grown over 30 years, if you leave it there and you don't touch it, could be as much as 7 figures over time, depending on how that's invested over time. The stock market has peaks and valleys. And when the stock market crashed in 2008, right? Is that about right? And again, just recently, because of this virus we're in, you had to stay the course.
You did.
Because Ford was going to continue to build cars, and GM, trust me. Apple was going to continue to make smartphones. There were certain companies that are essential companies.
Correct.
That are going to continue to do business. So you just hang in there. So budget. There are a lot of ways and a lot of software that's free, guys. That's free. If you look it up, that you can find ways of using a graph or a spreadsheet to budget so you can eyeball your money.
Correct.
Number 2, and you mentioned this, get a side hustle. Another thing, Reverend Cobb, I've quoted him a lot today, we both have. Right. But he said, don't depend on one revenue stream. Get a side hustle, whatever that is. Come up with an idea. Always think about what else you can do. How can you make some money and take some of that money and save it? The other reason that folks have a lot of difficulty as it relates to their financing, and we're going to talk about this every week also, because that's how important it is, and that's credit card debt.
Right.
Credit card debt kills you. Again, we talked about the interest rates on credit card debt. We talked about how payments and interest is compounded, and they put interest on top of interest. Big banks make a big portion of their money on people who make decisions on wants rather than needs.
Correct. So you bring up some very, very good points there. One of the key things in reference to, he mentioned budgeting. Let's just say you are a beginning saver or investor. I'm a big believer in automating things. Number one, it's out of sight, it's out of mind. It automatically goes to wherever it's supposed to go, and I can't spend what's not there. So automate. What does that look like at some of your companies, a majority of companies? I would probably say have some type of payroll deduction, where you can automatically tell a certain portion of your paycheck to go here. Whether that be your 401k, whether that be a savings account, whether that be investments, etc. So those are good things that you can do today that doesn't require a lot of you. So that's some of the simplicities of budgeting. Now, with all that being said, I know I've been in this business 11 years. A lot of people don't like budgeting. It's kind of a bad word in our business. But the truth of it is, I'll give you an example. My wife and I think we're in probably decent situations in terms of finances. We look at a budget every single year, at least once. And particularly, I like to look at it in January when I'm sitting there talking with my wife and say, you see that line item? How much we spent in that category last year? Let's look a little deeper. Where did that go? But we do that every single year to make sure that, hey, again, we want to dictate where our money goes, and we want to make sure it goes to the things that we value and the things that we are passionate about, because we know that long term we're going to help advance the causes of those organizations, those groups of people, etc. But we know we can only do that by maximizing and dictating where our funds should go.
And I love automation. I love being able to, if you're going to save $100 a month, if you're going to write a check to the bank to save $100 a month, you are not going to do it. I'm just going to tell you, you're not going to do it. It's too much work, and it's a much simpler way of getting it done.
Right.
When you get your payroll check, Uncle Sam gets his money first.
Correct.
You know, Uncle Sam gets anywhere, depending on what tax bracket you're in, anywhere between 10 and 20%, you know, give or take a percentage.
Correct.
If you can pay Uncle Sam first, then why don't you pay yourself first?
Right.
Have that money deducted and put in a savings account every month that you will not touch. I 3 weeks ago we talked about whole life insurance.
Okay.
And there's pros and cons. You know, some people say buy term, some people buy whole life. Depends on a personal preference at the time.
Right.
Well, in 1992, you know, I had a friend of mine, Ed Barnes, and I bought a whole life policy from him. And that payment was payroll deducted out of my checking account, not payroll, but out of my checking account every month. So I didn't see it.
Right.
If I had to write a check for it,
Yeah.
I may not have done it. Fast forward, it's a paid off policy. It's a lot of money in cash value, and I never have to make another payment in it again. Well, that was a form of investment, you know, that worked. So again, budget is important. Have a side hustle is important, and number two, please watch your credit card debt. Now we're don't have very many minutes, but I always like to leave them with some parting thoughts every show.
Okay.
We're going to talk a little bit more about how you think, and the quality of your thinking will dictate the quality of your life. What I want this show to do is not only give you some ideas and principles and information that you would not have got if it were not for the show, but to always tell you it all depends on how you think. The law of correspondence says that your outer world, what is happening outside, is a direct reflection of your inner world. So you got to change things from within in order to make things better from without. Who you are, what you want, and then how quickly you want to get it there.
Right.
And I want to share this. There's a reason. Think about this, audience. With everything else being equal, you had two people that started the same way. Not one person started with more money than the other because of family. Why is it that one person is successful and another person is not? What is it? And then what is success? You know, Earl Nightingale said success is a progressive realization of a worth and a value and an ideal. You know, that's success to him. So what sets you apart? Now I believe that it's, Marcus, I believe that it's three things. I think it's a lot, but I think basically it's three things, and we talked about them. One is discipline. Successful people are disciplined. Nick Saban said, either you suffer the pain of discipline or you will suffer the pain of disappointment. Wow. You can't teach it. I'm going to put $100 in here. I don't care what else happens. I'm going to make my money grow.
Right.
Because I know I'm 25 years old. At 35, I'm going to have some money, or at least some emergency funds if something happens that I didn't see happening. The other characteristic that I believe is very important is persistence. In the book, Think and Grow Rich, and I love the book, and I've read it a couple of times, Napoleon Hill said there is no substitute for persistence. He says, the one thing we know, if one does not possess persistence, one does not achieve notable success. When things are going bad, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, be persistent. And the other, I think, is what I'm going to leave people with today, Marcus. And that's folks who want to be extraordinary, want to be different, want to set themselves apart from everybody else. So what does that look like? It's those people are eager to invest in their own professional development. What are you willing to do to get it done? Number two, know that the future is created by the present. What happens to you guys 5 years from now, will be a direct reflection of what you do today.
Correct.
There will never be the right time to get things done. You can improve your financial situation. We're not going to make any excuses. There are certain things that we can't control, but the things that you can control, you can control. Have a well-defined purpose. Why are you here?
Right.
You know? Next, have an insatiable appetite for information. Marcus, let me tell you what's happened since I've done this. Every week, guys, I'm looking for information.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for things to share with you. And guess who's getting smarter while that's happening? Me. You know, I've learned so many things just by having an insatiable appetite for information. Always give before asking. Every successful person I know, the ones that have any character and integrity, are also givers.
Oh yeah, big givers.
Big givers. Embrace the genius of then some. I thought that's interesting. What do you think about that?
It's funny. Excuse me. I have a mentor who tells me all the time, do all you can, then some.
Embrace the genius of then some. You know, you go to work and you do what you got to do and you go home. No. Set yourself apart. Successful people like being extraordinary. And being extraordinary means you do a little more. And let me tell you what a little more means. I've always told my staff, I said, you don't have to do 20% more every day. If you do 3-4% more every day, but you do it every day, it's like money.
Correct.
Success grows. Be a great listener. That was difficult for me because I like talking. Be a great listener. It's the reason God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Take the initiative.
Correct.
You set it up. If someone asks you to do it, or if you see a task that needs to be done, do it.
Right.
Do it. It's part of being a leader. And finally, and I love this. Let's see if you've seen this one before, Marcus. Finally, master the abilities. You ever heard of master the abilities? This is what it is. Responsibility, accountability, dependability, adaptability, credibility, compatibility, availability, stability, capability, and sustainability. Master the abilities. Marcus, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been good.
It's always good. We're going to touch all different subject matters. Please do us a favor. Send Sharon Bell and I any information on finance or anything related to finance, because everything we do is related to money. Send it in. We will do research. If I don't know it, I'll bring in someone who knows it much better. As far as investing is concerned, he was the expert. I wanted to bring him in and use his expertise to help you. So no matter what the subject matter is, please, if it's related to money in any way, let us know.
And as a parting thought, I would just say, hey, since we're talking to a mass audience and even some of our St. Stephen's audience, as our pastor has often preached and talked about, hey, as a man thinketh in the heart, so is he. So when it comes to your finances and your money, where do you think you're going to be? What can you do? What can you control? Let some of these things seek in, explore them, talk them out with your spouses and even with your kids. Please do that at an early age, because that's where it starts. And then we can make some more proficient measures.
I'm glad you said that, because some of our future shows are going to be, how do you explain money to elementary school kids? How do you do it to middle and high school kids? And then what do you do for people just get out of college? Those are future shows. Next week, guys, we're going to talk about, we're going to have Raymond Smith here, Vice President of Park Community Federal Bank. And there are some programs they have on investing money, and he's going to share how to get money to start a business. Thank you very much, and have a good week.
Take care.